Is underwhelming a fair word to use to describe Connor Bedard's sophomore season? Carlo, that's one of the topics we'll be addressing in today's FanDuel 5, focused on recent #1 overall picks. We're looking at the last 5 of them. We're going to rank them from 1 to 5 as to who we would like to start a franchise with. Needless to say, Connor Bedard likely to go #1, but we're also talking about Macklin Celebrini, of course, Bedard, Slafkovsky, Owen Power, and Alexis Lafreniere. Who will be the best first overall pick from this 5-year stretch? I'm going to assume you're going with Bedard.
Yeah, I'm not going to let an underwhelming season in year 2 from Bedard take away my chance at having him at #1 with a player that I want to build my franchise around. And I think you used the perfect word. It is an underwhelming season. He's got 3 goals in 19 games and doesn't look anywhere close to the player that broke into the NHL last year with the dominance that he did. And when I talk about dominance, here's a guy that has dominated his whole hockey career through all the ranks, through junior ranks, through international play. This guy has always found a way to be an impact player. And that's why I still choose him as #1. One, because he plays the center position, and that's what most franchises want to build around. But he's a generational talent. He's a guy that impacts the game in many ways. He's got game-breaking abilities. And I talked about it. I just think about his profile leading up to this point. He's shown that he can play with the best, against the best at all levels. So that's why he's still my surefire lock at #1.
Before the season, we talked about Bedard as a lock for Team Canada at the Four Nations face-off. But considering the start that he's had to the season, do you still view it that way?
I don't. And even though he's a guy that I had him on my list as a guy maybe to play with the likes of McDavid and McKinnon because of the excitement of playing with that level of talent. But I think the Four Nations face-off teams has to be a reward for guys who are having successful seasons. And right now, with the start that Bedard's had with Chicago, I wouldn't classify that as a successful season. I think for the struggle with Bedard moving forward is Chicago's got to do a better job surrounding him with better talent, because he is an incredible talent, and you wonder how much better he could be and how his game could elevate playing with better talent around him.
All right, so we both have Connor Bedard at #1. #2, I'm going to guess you have Macklin Celebrini, who has had a pretty decent start to his NHL career. He's only played 8 games, but he scored 4 times in those 8 games. Am I correct in my assumption?
Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong option at #2, but you are correct with my pick. I'm going with Macklin Celebrini at #2 just because, again, he plays the center ice position. And any team looking for a rebuild and looking for a face of the franchise, a guy that they can build around, you immediately look to strengthening your center ice position. And with Macklin Celebrini and the skill set that he brings, with his speed, with his hockey IQ, with his elite skill level and hockey sense, that's a guy I want to build my team around. And for Macklin Celebrini, the challenge that he's going to have right now transitioning to the NHL is going to be getting acclimated to a pro type of schedule. This guy played in the USHL, played in college hockey. They don't play that many games. So that's going to be the transition and the patience you're going to have for a guy like that wanting to establish himself as an elite NHL player. But so far, with a young group of NHL San Jose Shark players, he's done a pretty magnificent job averaging over 19 minutes a night in helping that rebuild in San Jose.
Worth noting that Celebrini has the 3rd best odds to win the Calder on FanDuel, plus 550. Could be some good value considering the goal production we've seen in the 8 games that he's played to this point. Michkov and Stankoven, 1 and 2 respectively. All right, I think #3 is where it gets interesting. You're picking between Lafreniere, Owen Power, and Slafkovsky. Who's your #3?
I'm going with Alexis Lafreniere on this one because I was really high on him coming out of the junior ranks, where he dominated the junior ranks, putting up incredible amount of points, went and did the same thing at the World Juniors. I think for Lafreniere, the stumble in his career was the COVID year. Because you look at where he got drafted, were the New York Rangers. Not your typical #1 overall selection on a team that's really bad, having an enormous amount of opportunity for a young guy coming in. And I just think that I labeled him as a generational talent back then, but he's a guy that has taken a little bit of time because his development stalled a little bit during the COVID year. He got drafted to a Rangers team that won a lottery that was pretty much set in stone who their top 6 was going to be. So he had to start lower the lineup, wait for his opportunity. But if you look at his 5 years as a 23-year-old in the National Hockey League, every year he's continually to get better, having his best year last year, scoring 28 goals. I think on the pace that he's on right now, with the Rangers team that he's on right now, he could easily be a 30-40 goal scorer if he continues at this pace. And I love the game-breaking abilities that he has, potential that he has shown so far. And he's an incredibly smart hockey player. Given the right opportunity that he's getting right now at the Rangers, I expect his game to continue to grow, even to the point where I expect him to be a strong nominee for the Four Nations Canada team.
I am stunned, frankly, with you as a card-carrying member of the Defensemen Union, that Owen Power is not number 3 on your list. I get all the arguments for Lafreniere or Uri Slafkovsky, but I think it's safe to say that Owen Power has a future as their number 1 defenseman in the NHL. He's 21 years old. He's playing 22-plus minutes a game for Buffalo, producing offensively as well. Why not Power over Lafreniere?
Well, I just think anytime you have a chance to add an exceptional forward to your group, a guy that can, like I said, control the middle of the ice as a center iceman, or the guy that can impact the game with game-breaking abilities, those are guys that I would choose over, young stud defensemen, because they're sometimes too good to pass up because they're not available in the time you need them. Like, you look at Buffalo, the 2 chances that they've had to draft number 1 overall, they've taken defensemen because defensemen were the strongest group in that draft class. So not to throw shame on any one of these players, because they're exceptional players and anybody would have them, but given these 4 guys that we're dealing with, they're all exceptional talent up front. Those are guys that I would choose over defensemen. You
truly can't go wrong. These are 5 really quality options: Power, Lafreniere, and Slafkovsky. Do you have Uri Slafkovsky at number 4, or is it Owen Power?
Well, considering the way I just answered my last question, I have Uri Slafkovsky number 4, because everything about this guy's potential is what scouts and people in management salivate over. It's that big, strong power forward that we don't see enough of in today's game. And when you talk about coaches on how they want to play the game, they want to play with structure, they want to play with heaviness, but they also want to play with big bodies in their lineup. I think Uri Slafkovsky is a great example of that. A guy that, coming into the National Hockey League, didn't have many games to develop into being this guy. So he's taking this time early on in the National Hockey League to develop into that. And I think we saw huge strides made last year in Uri Slafkovsky's game, where in the second half of the season, he was one of the best players in the game with his point production, finishing with 20 goals, 30 assists, 50 points, gets the big contract this offseason. But I think for Uri Slafkovsky in year 3, what we're finding out in his game is that he's figuring out that the NHL is a hard league to survive in, because every year you have to make the necessary adjustments to make sure that you're continuing to improve, continue to elevate your game, and to continue to develop into the player everybody expects you to be. So that's why at 6'3", 225 pounds, Uri Slafkovsky is my pick at number 4.
If the former stud NHL defenseman Carlo Colaiacovo has Slafkovsky and Lafreniere ahead of Owen Power, who am I to disagree? Our FanDuel 5 number 1 overall picks from the last 5 years: Bedard, Celebrini, Lafreniere, Slafkovsky, and coming in at number 5, it's Owen Power.